going on, Sports Minds? It's your boy MJ coming at you with another episode of the Fantasy Fumble. I'm here with my co-host and friend over here, Joe. Joe, how the hell you doing today, Birdman?
I'm doing very well, Manny. I'm 2-1 in 5 leagues, and of course, I'm 0-3 in your Champions League. That hurts. I'm in a rough spot right now because I have another tough matchup this week. But generally speaking, I'm doing great, and I'm very happy with all my teams, even my 0-3 team. A lot of things I couldn't predict, and that's the name of the game. How are you doing?
I mean, I'm doing good mostly. I'm one in my worst record is 1-2. And I, like most people, have the fantasy blues with certain teams. Certain players are not showing up, or injuries are taking over. But for the most part, a majority of my teams are doing really well, and I'm just really taking it, step by step, and actually doing what I do, which is trading and making moves,
You
baby.
make a lot of
I do.
moves. I've seen it. Yeah. And your teams do look good. I check out everyone's team, and your team, all the champions teams look really good. Which is tough when you're 0-3. But my matchup this week, like I said, is tough. But I've been looking at all your teams and all the moves you're making, and your squads look really good. And 1-2 isn't even that bad. I mean, there's so much time left. I've won a couple years starting 0-3. So I'm not worried about it yet. One more loss, and I will be worried about it. But hey, I still got the other 5 teams. So we'll see how it works out.
Well, if you get another one, where you can go for a surplus of goods.
Yeah, for a
Because I have them.
desperation move. If I go 0-4, you will start to see some desperate moves, and I'd love if you could accommodate me with that.
Yeah. I'll see what I can do, my friend. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, because if you get 5 or 6, you're kind of out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
it's 6 for sure, but it's going to be like, you start 0-4, you got to make some fucking moves before it's too late.
Yeah, and a lot of guys don't realize that, and this is something that I like to preach to my guys in my leagues, and they think I'm just telling them this because I want to trade with them. And the answer is yes, I do want to trade with you, but it's not the only reason. The reason
Yeah.
is I trade to stay alive because I see trends before they happen. I'm like, what's that? Beautiful mind? No, I'm just kidding. It's the autism. No, I'm just playing. No, but seriously, it's like you when your team is not doing great and you have a superstar, and if your superstar shits the bed, that's one guy that you're banking on having 30 points from that you're not getting anything. And
Man,
if your team is hurting and you trade that superstar for 2 good players, 2 good starters, and those 2 good starters give you 15 points, that's 30. The 30 points that you needed ended up coming from those 2 players. So
oh
what
yeah.
guys don't realize is that you're one injury away, or one bad move away from basically either losing your matchup or your season.
Oh, I'm thinking about how many games are decided by 5 or 10 points. And I've been talking with you and Savage about trading CD Lamb because I know that time is coming. I almost did it last week. I almost did it this week, just because when you look at your matchup and you're like, as you just said, I can trade him and get 2 guys that are going to get me 30, opposed to CD by himself getting me 20. It sucks, but there comes a time when you might have to do that. When your studs get injured, because I got Pacheco on the bench, he's probably not coming back anytime soon. You got to make some moves.
Yeah, agreed. It's unfortunate, but it's part of the game, right? You got to try to stay alive, and you got to go out swinging, because if you just sit there and you sit on a sinking ship, it just takes away the fun.
It
So
does, man.
at least
Trades,
try making some moves, man. You
yeah,
never know what could happen.
and I mean, your text cracked me up. Your group text today, where it said, I want to make a trade just for the hell of it. Dude, I mean, that is hilarious because that's my mindset a lot of the time, is like, I'm just having fun. I like to trade. I like to make moves to improve my team. And I'm heavily involved in trading most seasons. I'm trying to be a little bit more measured this year, but I do like to just trade. It's fun. It's, a big reason I play fantasy football is the excitement that happens within a trade. Just to see, hey, I made a dangerous play here or a risky move. but it's so fun when it works out.
It's called a gambler's rush, my friend. That's what it's called.
That's a little dopamine hit.
It's the addict in us. We love
true.
it. We're just addicted.
Hey, it's okay. It's not a bad addiction to have.
Not if you keep it under wraps, guys. It's all right. Fantasy football is considered a game, not it's not considered. It's a game of skill, not a game of chance, according to the state of Florida. Here, all right. Just saying, I looked it up. All right. All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our news and our updates. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Hey there, my name is Manny James Gonzalez with PRB, and I'm a real estate agent here in Central Florida. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, military relocation pro, and big supporter of 2A and veterans' rights. My specialty is VA transactions. I'm also experienced in all parts of real estate.
I've been living in Florida for over 20 years, and I can tell you we still believe in freedom down here. One of the greatest job markets, excellent economy, and no state income tax. When it comes to an agent, you want one that's going to be honest, not afraid of a fight, and most importantly, willing to do the things that some agents aren't willing to do.
And what's that, Manny?
Shoot straight, Dan. If you're ever considering buying in Central Florida, you need somebody you can trust, and I got your six. I'm Manny James Gonzalez, find land for the free and home for the brave.
Welcome back, ballers. Let's get into some news and notes. First things first, Carolina Panthers wide receiver Adam Thielen was placed on injured reserve. So make some moves if he was in your lineup. And Manny and I were talking about the waiver wire. You're in another predicament here where, similar to when Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp went out, who do you add? You know, I think if you look at the Rams wide receivers last week, they all had between like 3 and 5 targets between the 4 of them. And that's not a recipe for success if you got one of those guys in your lineup. Now, Tutu Atwell played the best. He had like 95 yards, but I think he was still only targeted 5 times. And that's the thing, is when you're getting all those wide receivers in the mix for 4 or 5 targets, that's not going to really help you too much, maybe in a double flex. But what are you going to do with these wide receivers in Carolina? Are you even going to roster either one of them?
You know, I definitely there's one I do like, and not just because he's a rookie, Xavier Legette. You know, like I think the guy has all the talent in the world. He's big, he's explosive. And Andy Dalton will focus in on one wide receiver, and that's it. That's the way he plays ball. You know, and that was Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's gone now. So who's that guy going to be? It's Xavier Legette. He actually flashed a little bit. He had 2 receptions on 3 targets and 42 yards. And one thing that they were talking about here was that his snap count jumped up. He only logged 44 out of the 74 snaps. And then last week he had like half of that. So now with Adam Thielen going out, he's going to be playing a lot more snaps. And if you watch, you know, the Carolina Panthers play, and if you watch Jonathan Mingo play, he's better than Mingo, because Mingo drops passes, right? He has talent. He was a higher draft pick last year, or when they got him, but he's just not really going to be the player that they want. And I think Legette is a playmaker. So that's the guy I would gamble on. He's not going to produce right now, but, you know, give it about 4 to 6 weeks. And, you know, if Andy Dalton's there, even if Bryce Young takes over, you know, maybe this benching is good for him. Who knows? But
yeah, Andy Dalton, though, I mean, every time he gets in, he's kind of like Flacco. Every time he gets the ball in his hands, he makes things happen, which, I mean, not every time, but most of the time. And it's cool to see a backup come in there. I mean, shit, you got to see it with Big Dick Nick when he won the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, right now, I think if you got Deontay Johnson, you're pretty happy about that, because you know he's going to get fed until Legette gets more comfortable with the offense.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Now, moving on, we've got a lot of injuries again, and we're not going to bore you to death with the limited practice because the names are just too long, but make sure you check your lineups. If there's a Q next to your guy's name, look at that injury, see if they're limited in practice, see what the expectations are and make plans accordingly. But we're going to go over the list of people that did not practice on Wednesday. Now, at running back, you got Dameon Pierce, probably not going to play him anyway. Joe Mixon did not practice. Jerome Ford from the Cleveland Browns did not practice. Jaylen Warren, who has been a total dud all year, did not practice. And then Alvin Kamara, pay attention to that. He did not practice, and he's got an injury. It has two things listed, his hip and his rib. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on. But then also to round it out, the guy that's been ruled out already is Austin Eckler with a concussion. So moving on to wide receivers, we have Deebo Samuel did not practice, probably going to miss a couple more games, at least one. Tank Dell did not practice. I think he is expected to play, but keep a close eye on that. And the Eagles didn't practice today, but Devonta Smith got a concussion, and A.J. Brown is still dealing with that hamstring injury. So keep a close eye on both of them. Saquon's going to have another monster day. We can guarantee that. But Devonta Smith is probably not going to play. And A.J. Brown, big question mark there. So keep a close eye on both of them. And then at tight end, Evan Ingram did not practice. Not sure if we can expect him in week 4 or not. Trey McBride, concussion. You know, the thing is with a concussion in the NFL, they're usually going to make you take at least one game off. So make plans accordingly. You could put Zach Ertz in your lineup and probably be pretty happy. And David Njoku, he did not practice today either. I'm not sure what's going on with his ankle, but they talk like he's going to come back and then he doesn't come back. So keep a close eye on all those guys. Quarterback position looks like everyone's actually trending towards playing. So most of the guys that you're going to have in your lineup should be a good start.
Now it's time for our hot matchups of the week. Now, for my hot matchup, I went ahead and went with a game that it's going to be explosive because there's a lot of talent on both sides of the field. That is going to be the Commanders versus the Cardinals. All right. That's going to be a great game. You have Jaden Daniels on one side. He has several weapons, which will be Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin. You know, they have obviously, Austin Eckler's out, which you mentioned before. But Jaden Daniels by himself is an explosive weapon. So they're going to score a lot of points. They're going to move the ball. The new Commanders are actually a really good team to watch offensively. Defense still buns. So you don't expect much on that side. And that's why I think the Cardinals are going to eat themselves because Kyler Murray's a stud. James Conner is a mutant. You know, he just goes in there and just like destroys people. And then like any mutant, machine parts fall apart sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. And obviously they Trey McBride is questionable. Who knows if he's going to play, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is a truth. So he's going to be out there catching it. And then they'll probably spread it to other guys. Who cares who they are, right? Because, it could be anybody. But really, that's pretty much these teams are centered around those, it's almost like a triangle style offense where you're going to have those three main guys that it's going to run through. And besides that, you're not really going to want to start anybody else.
Yeah, man. And I really like the way Kyler Murray looks out on the field. He looks so comfortable. And the same thing with Jaden Daniels. Now, what's funny is I had Jaden Daniels ranked really high in my quarterback rankings, and I didn't have Kyler Murray. And they're both just playing awesome. Took Kyler Murray like one game to get comfortable, but now he looks real good. Like you said, Marvin Harrison Jr., absolutely the truth. I mean, my God, that guy looks good. And, I love James Conner, and he's going to keep doing what he does until he gets injured. Once he gets injured, make plans. Hopefully you got a handcuff. But I love their offense, and I'm so impressed. Even though I was really high on Jaden Daniels, he's looked awesome out there. And I wanted to like the Cardinals last year with the Commanders last year with Sam Howell, because he had a few awesome blow-up games too, where you're like, man, I know they're a struggling team overall, but there's times when you'd watch that offense like, wow. And I feel that so much more with Jaden Daniels this year, and love what they're doing. So I love that for a hot matchup. Should be a really high scoring game. And I think you will agree that my hot matchup is going to be absolutely fire as well. The Bills versus the Ravens. The Bills are 3-0, and they put up 47 points last week. Josh Allen had 4 touchdowns, and James Cook has been so consistent over the first 3 games. And he's also scoring touchdowns, which was his biggest hang-up last year. So that's great to see. And then Khalil Shakir, he's been looking good, and he's 2 touchdowns. He got another one last week, and Kincaid got a touchdown last week too. So it feels like the offense is finally coming together the way we expected. And Keon Coleman, even though he scored a touchdown, I need to see more targets until he can be a starter. But with the limited opportunities he's getting, he looks good too. I wouldn't put him in my lineup, but he looks good. And then despite being 1-2 on the other side of the field, the Ravens, they've got that incredible talent, and they should be fine as the year goes on. Lamar is a beast. King Henry is a beast. Looked amazing last week. Zay Flowers was solid in the first 2 weeks, but the game last week, even though they won, I believe it was 28-25. The receiving end of the game did not look very good. I don't know what's up with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. I mean, Isaiah Likely looked amazing in week 1, but they haven't done anything since then. So I can't really trust either one of them. But what are you going to do at tight end? You're going to play them. You don't really have, if you've got them on your team, you're going to play them. But I'm more confident that I feel like the Ravens need like a bounce back game for specifically their receiving core. And this could be it, because both teams do have a solid defense, but this kind of matchup, I think the high-powered offense will overcome that defense. And it will be a really solid back-and-forth game with the run and the pass.
Yeah, man, that's definitely a good matchup. I could see how the Bills and the Ravens could be high scoring. I actually have Josh Allen in a league. I was trying to get him in another one. What's so funny, Joe? I don't know what's so funny about what I'm saying right now, Joe.
We had to cut. We had to just cut before I started laughing. But anyway, keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
You're funny. I'm just kidding. Bills versus Ravens. So I have Josh Allen in another league, definitely. I also have Dalton Kincaid. I got that that stack. I love having a good stack, especially when you have a good quarterback tight end combination, which used to be the Mahomes Kelsey combination. That was
used to be.
That's something that's a lot of fun to have. But I can see how that could be high scoring. Obviously, James Cook has been on fire. Like, I didn't even realize he got that much better in the offseason. Because when I saw him running, they were showing his angles on his ankles when he was running. So this was the floor here, and he was just running, and his feet would actually get this close to the ground when he was cutting. And he was just cutting like that.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, his feet were like so quick, and I was like, damn. After I saw that, that's why I was like, hey, are you willing to trade James Cook? Because when I see players that I like, I see them in game tape, and that's when I like them. It's not like a player that just see his stats.
Same here, man.
And not just like a highlight. Like, you can see a highlight for a player like Raheed Shaheed, and be like, oh, that guy just scored 2 touchdowns for 50-yard touchdowns, right? Or you see somebody that just blows up. But like, it's all based upon a scheme or something like that. But some players are just so good that it doesn't matter what scheme they're in, they're going to produce. It doesn't matter what scenario they're in, they're going to produce. So those are the type of players I typically like to go after.
Yeah, and I feel the exact same way, where when I'm watching a full game, and even if, like, let's say, a running back only gets 60 or 80 yards, but you see with those opportunities that they look really good out there, that goes a long way with me. And I've always liked the way James Cook looked. Last year I thought he looked good too, but this year I agree he looks much better, just more comfortable too. And I have him in like 3 or 4 leagues, and I have Josh Allen in one league, but that league I have Josh Allen, I have James Cook, and he's a receiving running back where he catches a lot of balls. So I love that combination. And I'm just so happy to see like the flow, the offense flow the way it is right now, because, Josh Allen's going to have his ups and downs, but the ups are going to be huge and the downs are going to be like, still respectable. And James Cook, his consistency, because, last year he had over 1,100 rushing yards. He just didn't get many touchdowns. So people were really down on him. And I understand with Josh Allen snatching a lot of those touchdowns, why you would be concerned. But like you said, just visually, he looked so good on the field, and his stats did back it up in every category except for touchdowns. So I like that whole offense. And I'm still really high on Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Dalton Kincaid too. No, I see them continuing to thrive. These 3-0 Bills are going to keep running.
Yeah, I think the Ravens will definitely still give them a run for their money. And it's going to be, they won't be able to contain King Henry. So it's going to come down to who's going to score more, right? Like, it's going to come down to that last possession. Like, is the defense going to come up with the stop? And I think the Ravens, unfortunately, has a better defense. So I think, I know you said the Bills will keep rolling, but I think the Ravens will derail them and actually get a win this one.
Okay.
They're going to play that smash mouth, hard grit defense on them, and might even get a good hit on Josh Allen or two.
I do cheer for the Ravens when the Steelers are knocked out of the playoffs, but until then I don't, because I want to see them do poorly. They always give us a hard time.
Yeah, they're division foes.
Steelers are 3-0. How about that? But I do want to see the Ravens lose, but you make a very valid point. Their defense, arguably the best defense in the league still. They look good. I'm just saying the Bills defense has looked decent too. But yeah, I don't think they can contain Lamar, King Henry. And again, Zay Flowers was really good in the first couple of weeks. He just didn't have a great game last week. But I really don't know what's going on with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. But a lot of football left. We've only seen 3 weeks. I'm still going to say like these guys are going to fall into place and start playing some really good football.
Agreed.
Now let's get to our cold calls of the week.
Are you cold?
Oh, boy. Cutting glass with those fucking things. I'm going to kick things off with one that I know you agree with. The Titans versus the Dolphins. The Titans have been struggling all year, which typically leads to a bad game script. And garbage time, typically, the Titans have been struggling all year, which typically leads to a bad game script. And garbage, I can't speak. Let me start this over. The Titans have been struggling all year, which typically leads to a bad game script, and garbage time can be beneficial sometimes, but it's certainly not ideal. I do not like relying on fourth quarter garbage points when I'm playing fantasy football. I want to be on a high-powered offense that's going to give me consistent numbers throughout the entire game. Now, Calvin Ridley is extremely unpredictable, and as always, he came crashing back to earth in week 3. Hopkins had a good game last week, but week 1 and 2 were so bad that a lot of people dropped him. Like, he had 2 points in week 1 and 2. So he was on a waiver wire in one of my leagues. I actually tried to pick him up, but somebody else did. I wouldn't play him though. And Pollard was good in week 1 and 2, but the game script hurt him a lot last week. So that's the thing I don't like. I like Pollard just in general as like an RB2, but Miami has a decent run defense. So Pollard may struggle again. And again, so much of that depends on the game script. If they're getting blown out, they're not going to give the ball to Pollard nearly as much. I would start Pollard, but nobody else on either side. I would not start anyone else on the Titans. Now on the other side, the Dolphins only had 3 points last week. Tua is still out, and I don't think they've even decided who's going to start at quarterback this week. The quarterback situation is affecting the entire team, including Tyreek and Devon Achane. So obviously you're starting both of those guys, but with much lower expectations. I just don't like that game at all. I'm staying far away from it. Again, if you got your starters, Pollard, Tyreek, Devon Achane, you're gonna start them. But you got to bring those expectations down a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree. Those are two teams that are struggling right now. I mean, I don't know what Will Levis is doing this year. He's definitely not playing how he should. So their Titans are looking pretty bad. And Miami obviously has a quarterback injury, so it's going to be a hard game to watch. And unfortunately, it's not going to be something that either team want to have any investment into, and nor do I have any. Did I have any in the preseason? So you should have listened to me, assholes.
One thing I think I
just
actually made a bad call. During the draft, I had the option of Tyreek and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I love Tyreek, obviously. Everyone wants Tyreek on their team. But I was just thinking about Amon-Ra St. Brown is generally a safer play. And the reason I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a safer play is because of the quarterback. I feel like Jared Goff is just that consistent guy that's going to give Amon-Ra a bunch of targets. Whereas I told you the reason I was not, I don't even want to say as high because I'm super high on Tyreek, but the ceiling for Tyreek, boom, through the fucking roof. But I felt like Amon-Ra was just safer because I told you, I didn't trust Tua, not just because of injuries, but also just because of the way he plays football. I felt like Amon-Ra was a safer play. And then after seeing Tua, get knocked out for probably a month, maybe even 6 or 8 weeks, that's how unpredictable fantasy football is going to be with all these injuries.
Yeah, and you went with your gut, and your gut was right. At the end of the day, like whatever your reasoning was, like people say your reasoning was flawed. However, it was justified within yourself doesn't matter because at the end, the result is what you thought it would be. So, and that's how fantasy is. It's just as much luck as it is skill.
Oh, yeah. Nice blend.
Definitely. But on the Miami side, I was actually referencing Titan side that I was really low on. Miami, I was bullish on Tyreek as well. Not so heavy on Jalen Waddle, and I was actually bullish on HM, which he's still having a pretty good season so far.
Yeah.
Considering the circumstances, but anybody else, pretty much just don't even plug them in. Just leave them on your bench.
I have a feeling going into this next game, they've had a little bit more time. I know the quarterback situation's up in the air, but I'm sure they've had more time with their options, with their quarterbacks to just talk to them. And I feel like they're going to lean real heavily on Achane, and Tyreek will probably, be affected more. But yeah, I don't know what really happened last week. Achane didn't do anything. Tyreek hardly did anything. And I feel like with a quarterback that is not going to be dumping the ball downfield, that Achane could be fine, even if it's, a couple more weeks until they get it together. I'm not worried about Achane, but until Tua comes back, I'm a little bit worried about Tyreek.
Definitely. And especially worried about Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really on my radar much because, he's a great football player, but he's always dealing with injuries himself. So he hasn't done much this year. Maybe a flex play, but not anytime soon.
Now, for my cold matchup, I ended up going with the Browns versus the Raiders. I mean, these are two teams that are 1-2, just complete dumpster fires, trying to figure out who they are. You got the Browns over here rolling weed on the side of the bench, like getting high as kites. They got Deshaun Watson getting freaking back massages right there on the sidelines. Like it's a sideshow over there, man.
It is
like that's a Brown side. Nick Chubb's over there squatting like 600 pounds of strippers. Like it's crazy, man. Like I mean, the guy is rehabbing from an ACL.
Yeah, they need to get Nick Chubb back, but you can't rush back from when you're getting your leg amputated. So.
Yeah, that's definitely something crazy. But On the other side, obviously the Raiders, like they are not the same Raiders that was coached last year, and they actually got better in the offseason, I thought, on paper, personnel wise. So they added some players, but offensively with Gardner Minshew, they took a step back.
Yeah.
Zamir White's not getting the touches like he should. Alexander Madison's the number one guy there. Like, what the
It's
fuck?
hard to understand what they're doing. I mean,
It's crazy. They're making him the goal line back,
yeah.
and that's what Zamir White does.
I know
get
that's
it,
what I'm saying. It's confusing to me.
Madison's the bigger guy, but that's never really been his skill set. Like you got to get Zamir White going. That's what he did when Jacobs was in last year, and they did that with a lesser O line. Their O line got a little bit better. Like one or two. They made one or two additions to it. But I don't know. I just think it's a horrible game. The spread is at like 37, so it's one of the lower ranked games.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be a complete dumpster fire. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they benched Deshaun Watson this game, and you see Tyler Huntley come in there and actually take over.
How about Amari Cooper though? He came to play. Finally showed up. I was just talking shit on him last week. But
I heard you.
Yeah, that's what happened. Like he's another one of those guys that, like, kind of similar to Waddle, where you're going to have some monster weeks, or even like Calvin Ridley that we were just talking about, or Hopkins. Damn, a lot of these vets are the same, where they're going to have these monster weeks, but they're going to have so many duds in between that you just don't want them on your team because the stress of like putting them in your lineup is just not worth it.
Yeah. I'd rather have a guaranteed 10 or 15 point guy than a boomer bust 20-point guy. Yeah.
All day. Now let's get into our shit calls of the week. All right. I missed the hot matchup again. I mean, the Eagles versus the Saints had a total of 27 points, and I was expecting it to be about 50. With that said, a lot of these guys did actually show up and play great football. They just couldn't find the end zone. Barkley had an unbelievable game. He did find the end zone a couple times. Devonta Smith and Chris Olave, they played really well. And Kamara played all right too. And even Dallas Goedert, who I was talking shit about last week, and pretty vocal about it in my other leagues too, making fun of my friends that were deciding who to play. Should I play Ferguson or should I play Goddard? And I'm like, oh, if you're playing me, put Goddard in. Boy, that was a mistake. But Ferguson played pretty well too, but Goddard played unbelievable. We had like 170 yards or something. So all these guys played really good football. They just couldn't find the end zone. And who that hurt most was Jalen Hurts and Derek Carr. So I was expecting the entire offense to have a good game, including those two. I thought Carr was going to keep it rolling, and I thought Jalen Hurts was, going to be typical Jalen Hurts, but actually even better. Saints defense is good, yes, and Eagles defense showed up too. But Jalen Hurts is one of those guys where you're comfortable with 20 to 25 every week. So I was banking on like 25, 30 last week, and I thought Derek Carr was going to get you 20, 25 as well. They both got you about 10, and the rest of the team really made up for it, aside from Rashid Shaheed, who got you 0. So although the guys didn't find the end zone, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Kamara, and Dallas Goedert, they got you points. If you played them, you're very happy. But if you played Jalen Hurts, like I did in a couple leagues, or Derek Carr, or Rashid Shaheed, not happy at all with that output. So I thought that was going to be an all-around boom, and it was half a boom, half a bust. Missed a hot matchup by about 25 points.
Yeah. And it happens, I definitely thought that would be a good game myself. So, happens to the best of us.
And it was a good game. It was a good game, but they'd get into the red zone and then they wouldn't get the touchdown.
I think we turned the ball over in the red zone a couple times.
Yeah.
So it was a rough game to watch. Very hard game. Actually, it wasn't a hard game to watch. It was a edge of your seat,
Yeah, I liked what I was into it, but a little frustrated they couldn't find the end zone. Almost all the points came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It was an exciting fourth quarter though.
Yeah, it was. It was crazy, but a lot of frustrating too because of all the cheap shots, you know.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
But yeah, overall it was a good game. Now for my shit call of the week, I had to eat crow on my hot matchup, which I thought would be the Cards versus the Lions. The total point score was only 33. Cards had 13, Lions had 20, and then it ended up being a defensive fest. Like both teams were sputtering on offense. Actually, Lions were playing great defense on the Cards, and and then the Lions just couldn't get anything going on offense. They just got just enough to win the game. So that ended up being my shit call because you didn't get a lot of points either, unless you had the running backs for the Lions. Those were the only
Yeah.
people that got points. Maybe Amon Ra got you some solid points. But pretty much, unless it was the main playmakers, it wasn't really a big day for anybody on either side.
I think you're going to have a nice bounce back with your hot matchup this week. Let's hope we're not talking about 3 weeks in a row hot matchups turn into hot shit.
All right, now let's get into our big balls call of the week. For my big balls call of the week, I ended up going with Mr. Brian Robinson Jr., Mr. 50 Cent. Okay. He's going to go ahead and have a big game this week. Austin Eckler is out. Obviously, I have the Commanders versus the Cardinals as my hot matchup. So I gotta ride that train to the wheels fall off. So I got him rushing for over 125 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Cardinals. So he's going to be one of the best, highest scoring. He's going to be a top 5 running back this week for fantasy football. So plug him in your lineups. He's going to be a can't miss guy. And we're going to have a player profile for him here as well this week.
I love that call. I mean, look how well he's been playing with Austin Eckler. Now with Austin Eckler sidelined, totally agree. He's going to have another boom game just with an extra cherry on top. So you're saying 125 rush yards and 2 touchdowns? I love it.
Yeah, 125 rush yards, and he's still going to take a couple receptions in there as well. So who knows if he has more touchdowns? Maybe he's a Kyron Williams.
Yeah. But let's talk about that real quick. Your big balls call last week, you said 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Kyron got 3. He had over 100 total yards. I think he had about 120 total yards and 3 touchdowns. So you've just been smashing it with the big balls call.
Yeah,
I think you've hit 2 out of 3. That's a really, really good numbers for these kind of calls we're making. You know, these are ballsy calls. They're elephant balls calls. And that's why when you do hit them, it feels pretty good. And last week I had one that was not really a huge balls call, but given the circumstances of the Steelers playing as 2-0, excited going into the next game, I said Justin Fields is going to have 250 total yards and 2 touchdowns, and he finished with 251 and 2 touchdowns. So I hit 2. I got my first one. Feels great, but it wasn't
Kudos.
that ballsy. You know, I'm saying it was kind of ballsy, but for a quarterback, it's kind of expected. But again,
Not
you're talking
for
about
Justin
Justin
Fields.
Right?
Now going back to what you were saying about my big balls call, everyone and their mother last week was on record saying that the Rams are going to have a horrible day. The 49ers are just going to demolish them and just have their way with them and take advantage of them. And it was just the opposite. The Rams were keeping up with them. So, the good thing is we talk about this, guys, because we have an opinion. We're not talking about this stuff because we want to follow what this guy is saying and what that guy is saying. To be honest, I don't really listen to anybody else. I do my own research. I watch my own training camps. I read my own updates. And that's where I come up with my opinion. I don't need to look at someone else and copy what he's saying, because half of the time they're just copying each other. And if
It's
I
true.
copy the next guy, what makes you want to follow me or follow us? Like that doesn't give you any incentive.
Yeah, and like when we started doing this a couple years ago, I actually would compare my notes. I would do all my research and take all my notes, and then I'd compare that with what other people were saying. I stopped doing that because it all it does is make me
Question yourself.
question my thoughts and sometimes even change my mind.
Yes.
And what I noticed a lot of people saying last week was that you're high on Kyron because they lost Puka, they lost Cooper. You're high on him, and everyone else was saying now they only got to focus on the run. And they said the same thing about Josh Jacobs with Green Bay. Now they only got to focus on the run. But Kyron rushed for over, or he had like 90 rushing yards and like 30 receiving yards or something, and 3 touchdowns. So yeah, maybe they did just have to focus on him, but they still couldn't stop him. Those first 2 games, he had, he found the end zone, but his yardage was much lower because they could throw the ball to Cooper Kupp. And now with Cooper gone, they were spreading the ball around a lot, but the only reliable player that you'd want on your fantasy roster was Kyron, and he put an exclamation point on it. That might not be a long-term thing, them just feeding him, but the short term, it's fantastic for fantasy because if the Niners can't hold him back, it's going to be real hard for other teams to hold him back too.
And yeah, and that kind of brings me to put a little bit more detail on my sell high, because I'm sure most of you saw my video on my sell high on Kyron Williams now. So obviously for me, it's sell high on him because this is the highest the value is ever going to be, right? Like once Puka comes back and all these guys, he's not going to have 3 or 4 touchdown games. He's going to be a 1 or 2 touchdown game guy. He's going to get you 20 to 25 points, consistently. And if you have his handcuff, you don't have to worry about, having to deal with the injuries. But if you can get what you need, for example, I identified in one league, I am horrible at wide receiver, but I have a surplus of running backs. So I have the maximum value from Kyron Williams. So that's why I say I'm going to sell high on Kyron Williams, because I'm not going to get any better return than I can for that guy. Right. That's the God's honest truth, right? You got to make sure you take advantage of, because it's like the stock market. Guys are going to have like their 52-week highs, and then they're going to get back to normal levels. And that's what you got to do, is play those levels.
Absolutely. His value is never going to get higher. And here's another thing, it's good that they're going to kind of ease up on his workload with the receivers coming back. When Puka comes back and Cooper Kupp comes back and they're at 100%, that's going to actually help Kyron. So if he's on your team, you do want them to come back, but you're going to ride these next couple weeks and feel real good about all the production he's going to give you and all the workload he's going to get. But long-term, you don't really want to see that. So if he is on your team, you want to see them scale back a little bit because you don't want to see him get injured. But yeah, his value is super high right now. And Manny and I almost made a trade today because I'm kind of struggling at running back, but CeeDee Lamb was a lot for me to give up. So we were trying to go back and forth, 2 for 2, 1 for 1. Still might make it happen, but I have to give it a little bit more thought. Maybe throw another 2 for 2 at you. But this week, we'll see. But for this week, for my big balls call, I think Rashee Rice is going to keep shining. He's currently at the top of the wide receiver food chain, and I don't see him slowing down. He's been the only reliable Chiefs player through the first 3 games. Kelsey's nowhere in sight. Obviously, they're struggling at running back with injuries, and I'm not really sure what the workload is going to look like for Carson Steele. Regardless, the only reliable player on the Chiefs right now is Rashee Rice. And this week, I'm predicting over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Okay. All right. I see you. And by the way, Carson Steele had 17 carries last game.
I know. He looked good, but I'm just saying I'm not exactly sure if that's going to be a consistent thing. It's just we have one game to go with, and I feel like
it could be very up and down.
Yeah, if they're playing from behind, Samaje P. Ryan's going to probably be a little bit more involved. And that because Pacheco was taking the full workload before that. He was taking all the passes and all the handoffs. So right now, I feel like that would be more split. It depends on game script for Carson Steele. But yeah, he had 17 and he had like 75 yards or something. He looked good. So I'm happy I picked him up in one league, but I'm not starting him with a smile on my face just yet.
No, still question marks.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the day we all hate. It's the end of the party. I really appreciate you guys all stopping by once again. We love the support. Again, tell your mama, tell your granddaddy, right? If he has a fantasy league he needs advice on, tell him to join the Stardom Screwums every Sunday.
Yeah, we'll give you advice.
We get live 15 minutes before, or actually 30 minutes before kickoff. It's only a 15-minute segment, but just to help you guys out before I start charging y'all for it. So take advantage of it now while it's still free. And Joe, you got anything to add for these guys here?
Just keep watching the player profiles and the YouTube shorts. We appreciate all the support. And love the comments, man. Keep them coming. I'm not sure if some of them are compliments or insults, but it's all good. We take it.
We take it all as compliments, man. There's no such thing as bad publicity. So
yeah, man. We'll take it. We'll take it.
Bring
Please.
it. Come on. I feed off your
We do.
hate.
We like seeing it, man. I'll take it. Any comment is good for me.
Oh, wait. We got to report to military camp. All right. So we appreciate you folks. Same time, same place next week, guys. We'll be reporting for duty at 900 hours here every Thursday night. Or Thursday morning. So we appreciate you all. You have a good rest of your day, and we'll carry on next time. See you guys later. All right. Bye-bye.